unfortunately for Wubbin, I think that it was just way too high of pressure from EUnited by the time he was starting to make a little bit more of those impactful rotations, and so we never really got to see the Geb come to fruition.
Yeah.
I would actually like to see him on a little bit more aggressive of a support. We know that he can play Ganesh, potentially even looking that direction.
And I don't know if I say Noble has to go back to the drawing board that much. The gank on dual lane onto Panda Cat was also a big problem for him. It ended up being a big turning point for EUnited because I think that fight went like 3-for-0 afterwards. So it's maybe just a little bit of execution could be better.
Panda Cat got away with murder there, and I mean it wasn't all on him. It was him getting the cleanup alongside of Mike, but realistically, it was just way too much from Noble as far as the commit was concerned. That's like one of those instances where your jungler calls for the attack, your team tries to follow up, you guys mess it up, and then you still look to commit because you don't really have any other choice by then. It was all or nothing because they knew that they were going to be counter-rotated on. They were already pushed up to EUnited's T1 tower. They might as well look for the cleanup, and that fact that it was never able to connect is really just what led to Panda Cat being such a problem.
Well, EUnited choosing to ban out Nemesis and Terra is what leads to Noble getting Ardio, and they first pick Lock It In. That's someone we don't get to see a whole lot of because you just don't want her in your games. Kukulkan and Fafnir, though, are what they picked up in response. They think that's going to give them a good chance against this Ardio.
And this is an entirely different style of draft from Noble as well. Heliodon actually falling back to that Susano. This is a god that I believe he feels a little bit more comfortable on, I would say. We've seen him debut it quite a few times. It's a god that he's always performed pretty well on, and I think that it's a solid choice, bringing back a little bit of that setup, but a little bit more escape potential as well.
It's a scary dual lane for Noble with Jing Wei as well, who's very safe, able to get plenty of farm in the dual lane. Hu Yi picked up for EUnited, who we've seen hit some hot spike ricochet, earlier here today. So be on the lookout for EUnited to do that as well. They go ahead and ban out Thoth and Raijin, though, turning an eye to the mid lane.
I think that Jing Wei is a great pick here, though, for being against the Hu Yi, because Panda Cat's probably going to want to try and play super aggressive, really abuse the laning phase potential that a Hu Yi can have. But on the Jing Wei, it's going to be really difficult to lock down Wowie. He just has so many different ways to escape, and keeping that in mind just means that if Panda Cat looks to overextend, somebody else from Noble can look to make a rotation.
EUnited pick up Morgan this time as if to show Moswell, hey, well, we'll pilot it this time, no problem. Especially after banning out both Raijin and Thoth, who are some of the other stronger mid lanes right now. So Noble do end up selecting Sol. Sol more than likely going to be the one they take mid here, I think, further.
I think I would have to anticipate that because Moswell is a player who does prefer his mages, and Sol certainly fits that description to a T. And also, Sol with Erlang Shen, a little bit different when it comes to setup, but I like the Sol in particular with the Ardio, because if that is indeed Ardio support and Noble are planning on having Wubbin start in the mid lane with Moswell anyway, they could have a ton of lane clearing potential, and this is a draft that I think will have a much easier time looking for that level 1 invade.
Well, Serket, speaking of that level 1 invade, was the one that was locked in last for EUnited to be their jungler. And that's scary whenever you got Morgan and Serket in the same game. If one, Serket's hard to deal with, so are two. Venenu having the ability, once he hits level 5, to transform into any other god in the game. And two Serkets, especially against like a Sol or Jing Wei, can be just a big source of trouble for Noble. So they're going to have to plan around that pressure that Veneno is going to be able to bring.
It's certainly one way to try and counteract just how many escapes Noble actually have. This is an incredibly mobile draft from Noble. Every single one of their members having some form of self-escape is so important, and it could potentially impact what EUnited is trying to plot for, because even if Scream and Veneno were to coordinate their ultimates together, it'd still be incredibly difficult for those two to just have to rely on only each other, as opposed to Noble, who can probably stay a little bit more grouped, considering they'll be able to fall back onto each other a lot faster.
Despite the early pressure that Moswell and Wubbin could have had, I know you were mentioning it, it looks like we are seeing Wubbin be a little bit closer to that dual lane, trying to help out Wowie in the matchup against Panda Cat and get ahead in mid. And they trust Moswell's ability to clear against the Morgan and Fafnir here with that Stellar Burst.
It makes sense. As a solo, you're never really going to have too hard of a time clearing out that initial wave. You might lose a little bit of gold, just as we witnessed, but Moswell still has that passive, and as long as you're stacking up your heat with your auto attacks as Sol, you're not only going to get the additional damage on your autos, but you just clear the wave a little bit faster.
Panda Cat is starting alone in the dual lane, though, and those Hu-Yi ricochets are doing a good job of him at least being able to secure the red buff. Looks like he wasn't quite able to get that purple, and he is able to come over and at least meet his minion wave. Noble are looking for the red buff, but they'll find it's already been taken down. And actually, he did safely secure his purple as well. Rotation over from Polar Bear Mike and Venenu, as well as those coming over from Skeledon. That could potentially be trouble. Gets the pullback onto 2. Wubbin getting lots of damage onto him. Actually forces out the sprint. Polar Bear Mike and Co had to back off there just to make sure they didn't get too much aggression.
Morrigan would have very easily, or not very easily, but very likely been dove underneath that T1 tower by a member from Noble, just considering how low he actually got. I like that decision, though, by Wowie and Wubbin to kind of just hang around the top of the Oracle Pit, just seeing whether or not they'd be needed to make that rotation.
It was a strong call from Venenu and Polar Bear Mike just sort of rotated over, try and get their mid-Harpies, and Skeledon was right there to set up what could have potentially been a worse fight. They do end up losing a relic for it, but that's all. No lives or anything lost. And at this point in the game, United have a small, maybe like 500 gold lead, but it is somewhat significant considering there hasn't been a first blood or anything yet.
Panda Cat, though, will have a slight experience advantage because of the fact that he was solo farming the first couple of waves by himself. Even with Polar Bear Mike making his way over now, it's still going to leave him slightly ahead of Wowie, which is pretty important considering the 2 ultimates. It's best for Panda Cat to have that advantage against Wowie now.
It's very cool. Actually, Benji's in some trouble here. Skeledon diving underneath the tower to try and help pick this up. Where was Walrus on the follow-up there for that kill? Now it's Scream who rotates in. Benji gets the knock-up, not quite able to hit Skeledon. Benji, though, looking for more. Venenu also here to try and help at the pin, forces him back.
So incredibly lucky for Skeledon that he was actually just out of range from that ultimate by Benji, but I believe that Walrus might have had a slight miscommunication. It seemed as though he was trailing a little bit more behind, although that could also be due to Skeely just having more mobility than Walrus on the Susano.
That's true. If he had blinked in, he would have been further forced than Walrus would be able to help out with. But Polar Bear Mike and Panda Cat have a lot of pressure here over Wowie and Wubbin in this duo lane, which is surprising to see. Wubbin actually just backing. He's going to be leaving Wowie to handle that pressure himself, knowing he can always just sort of fly back with that passive.
Fafnir is a great god against the Jingwei because not only are you boosting your own team's auto attack speed, but you also just have so many different ways to try and slow down or just completely stun out the Jingwei from her mobility.
United gonna have to just let Noble take these buffs on their side, not looking for too much more pressure here this far into the game, but again, without any kind of kills or anything like that, just superior farming on the map. They have established just a bit of a lead here in the early game. We do see them picking up their blue buff here for Benji, trying to give him a bit of an easier time over here against Walrus in the dual lane. But again, we're seeing horrific emblems come out for both of these solo laners. What is it about this horrific emblem that these solo laners like so much?
They just want the team fight potential, or even just the slightest edge over the other in the laning phase. Both of these solo laners absolutely love playing the hyper-aggressive route, and especially Walrus versus Benji. They're boys, so you already know that they just want to brawl it out against each other in an SPL level match.
That is what we've seen so far here. They've had a lot of slap boxing over there in that solo lane. Some kills coming out of it as well. This time though, Walrus having a slightly easier time of it. Benji is a little bit ahead in terms of XP, but nothing major. He can certainly still remain competitive as 4 members of Noble come over to try and secure these oracles, and they do. And they do.
I should also probably clarify, but when I say that they're boys, it's in they're really good friends, and you kind of just anticipate. I just realized now what that might have come across as, but nah, they're just 2 solo laners with pretty similar play styles. Benji probably more known for playing hyper-aggressive, though.
Scream is hanging out on the solo lane side, waiting for the mobility to come out from Walrus, and it does. Knock up from Benji to interrupt the taunt, and now the poison's ticking on him. Scream dashes through, but gets pulled back in to the ultimate from Skeledon, rather. Now it's Benji, the one who's backing up from Wubbin and Skeledon. So despite the ultimates committed there, 4 of them, no kills.
That was a wonderful ultimate from Skeledon, just buying Walrus enough time to get into the jungle, get right on top of Wubbin and get that sprint, but now it's Skeledon in a little bit of danger, trying to get away. Mike actually committed to the Dragon Form, and Venenu using that Morrigan ultimate to turn into Sir Ked. Got a little bit confused for a second there, considering we just watched Scream back, but Makes sense when it's a Morgan running around as that secondary.
And that's a lot of ultimates they commit over here on the solo lane side of the map. Veninu and Polar Bear might commit to the ults when it seemed like Skilldon was kind of already out anyway. So they were looking to try and get something from it, but maybe just a little bit too late when they finally end up pulling the trigger. Either way, they do get a minion wave under tower, take that tower in the solo lane down to about half health. So it's a lot weaker if they ever end up trying to group up on that side.
Both Skilldon and Scream have had their purification beats forced out, though. So with that in mind, it will slow down a little bit more of that high mobility action we've been seeing from these two junglers. Speaking of which, Skilldon with an excellent pull-in onto Venenu. Maswal looking for it, and he finds it with the Supernova.
Set up perfectly by Skilldon, and Maswal just follows up with the ultimate, securing first blood for Noble, which is big because last game EU United got off to an early start and never relinquished their lead. Now it's Noble who are the first ones to get a kill on the board. Still no significant leads or anything like that, but this has got to feel better considering how much they let the game get away from them last time.
It's also pretty tragic for Venenu on that Morrigan, considering that he used his Purification Beast to try and get away, and it still wasn't enough to escape that Stellar Burst and Supernova combination by Maswal.
He did turn around and try and get some return damage, but Skilldon going in again on the dual lane side of the map. Gets the pull on Panda Cat, but not able to pull him back far enough to get into trouble. They do at least take the purple buff, but Venenu is here looking for setup on to Skilldon. The stun is good to keep him locked down. Skilldon has to use the ultimate and fire it back into the middles of EU United to stay alive, but in the back line, I think we do see Scream coming in to clean up Skilldon, and that's not going to be it. The sprint is committed, and Wubbin gets deleted underneath the Suns from Panda Cat. 2 quick kills for EU United.
Wubbin turned for a second there to maybe try and assist his jungler, and it cost him his life, and now what should have just been 1 kill is actually going to be a 2-for-1 and a return invade onto that red buff. Noble no longer having that slight advantage from securing EU United's purple and red.
That's what makes EU United, that's what's got them looking so strong. Despite giving up that first blood, they do not panic. They actually go around the map and find another place for them to get an advantage with a strong aggression onto the dual lane side. Skilldon in particular went forward trying to catch out Panda Cat and gets punished for it, setting up more kills for the rest of the team.
Also just have to appreciate that patience by Panda Cat, looking for those ricochet stuns off that Mark of the Crow, and it's really pretty refreshing every time you get to see those fun little bounces or workarounds with the Hu Yi one.
Refreshing is a word. it's maybe not the one I would choose, but yeah, those bounces, it is fun to watch it when I'm not in the game. Yeah.
Skilldon's already got PTSD from Hu Yi ricochets, and I mean, this is only adding on to it. To be honest, I'm just surprised that Noble hasn't started banning Hu Yi just out of principle.
Just to keep Skilldon happy, just have to deal with it. Noble are able to secure those fire elementals, so they're at least getting something back on the map after giving up a couple kills just a few moments ago. Walrus and Benji just kind of hanging out in the solo lane. Actually, 2 backs coming from them. So it's a brief moment where on the map Noble will have the man advantage, but they recognize there's nothing for them to get over here at this Gold Fury pit, and Wubbin just kind of backs off.
Wubbin kind of just chilling on the Oracle Vision for E United, seeing if anybody was around their jungle, but making that smart rotation to mid lane, get a little bit of XP, and Maswal looks like he's prepared to back, and curious as to what the next item he's planning on starting will be, maybe leaning towards that. Oh, it's actually going to be the Dynasty Plate Helm.
The Dynasty Plate Helm does get picked up from Maswal. This is a bit of a safer defensive option rather than maybe some of the other ones that we've been seeing lately. It gives you some of those physical protections, as well as still contributing at least a little bit of magical power, so he'll have some there. But we also see that, I think what's really becoming an issue for him, though, is Scream has about a 1.5 level lead up over Skilldon, as Skilldon only just turned level 10. Scream is all over the map with this Circuit form. It's twice as much because of Veninu, but it seems like Scream's all over the map on that Circuit, and he's really helping to drive the pace of the game.
And again, that was kind of just handed to him, the lead at least, because as Noble was trying to disengage from the purple buff from E United, they just got caught, or Skilldon at least got caught, and then Wubbin ended up dying alongside of him, trying to do the good support thing, which was peel for him, but unfortunately he was just too low to really have his life saved, and now WoWie actually forced his purification beads, but it's going to take a little bit more than that to kill a Jingwei.
Panda Cat, though, happy to at least get those beads on cooldown so that WoWie won't have those available and only have one more safety switch in terms of that ultimate, which can get her out of danger usually pretty easily. Panda Cat a little bit ahead of Wowie over here in this lane, but I think that's just because Panda Cat got to do some solo farming early. But United baiting in Wubbin here. They go back in, they get the stun. It's so much setup from Scream as well. That lets them secure one more kill on the Wubbin, who's in trouble.
It's not just the setup, that damage was insane. And now Polar Bear Mike feeling a little bit of it from Skeleton, but still not enough. Sprint has been popped from United. They're looking to go in, but so is Noble, or at least the remaining members. Wowie actually just getting out. No, the dot tick from Polar Bear Mike is going to be enough to get him.
They actually clean up Skeleton as well. Polar Bear Mike coming up big for them in that fight. But Walrus getting the solo kill on the Benji to get something back on the map for Noble after dropping 2 members at least here on this duo lane side.
So the mark is currently 1 for 1. As far as Benji versus Walrus is concerned, and I think that's the most important part right now to Walrus.
Oh yeah, that he got that solo kill. As far as he's concerned, Noble's winning right now because he got his he got the solo kill over there in the solo lane, so he's happy. Wondering what the rest of his team's doing, I'm sure.
It's probably just blaming them all for feeding right there, but nah, realistically speaking, that was just a great rotation by Scream. Great recognition to bait Wubbin into that pit. As a support, he doesn't really have much option other than to try and face check the buff and whether or not United are looking to hard invade. And because of that, just falls victim. That Circuit is swinging away right now.
Noble believing that no one from United is around, and they're not wrong. Panda Cat drops the ultimate, but it looked like it was just a little bit too late. So Noble are able to come in and at least get a gold free for their trouble.
And still, great shot calling by Noble on that one. At least able to slow down a little bit of United's game pacing. It has felt like the map control has been mostly in United's favor ever since Wubbin and Skeleton were killed in the duo lane, but now with that Gold Fury having been locked down, it's a little bit of map pressure that can be alleviated from the duo lane, providing Wowie some more opportunities to farm, since Scream's probably going to prioritize mid and solo lane, not wanting to permit Noble to secure the portal demon for free.
It only eliminates or helps alleviate the gold lead, though. The experience lead, which is sitting around 6,000, is still going to be a problem. In particular, Polar Bear Mike is very far ahead of Wubbin. That could be a good part of why we're seeing Wubbin getting taken down so easily. Scream blinking into Skeleton, but Skeleton gets away scot-free. He's like, what happened? I'm fine. Not even close.
That's just kind of one of the fun facts of Susano. And speaking of which, Polar Bear Mike caught up in that cripple field right now from Wubbin. Not able to take too much damage, though, as Malswell's got his priority focus onto proccing out that damage on the Veneno. But, wow. Scream and Walrus. That's I would not have anticipated that one. Speaking of which, though, it's still happening in the mid lane.
Polar Bear Mike is up into his ultimate, and Moswell dropped his ultimate right over the top as well. That blows Polar Bear Mike. Skeleton ends up getting the credit for it, though. Panda Cat commits his ultimate on top of that tier 1 mid lane tower as well. After that, a kill going the way of both United and Noble, since Polar Bear Mike falls in mid and Walrus falls in solo.
Even if they don't lose their T1 tower in mid, they're most likely still going to lose this portal demon, if not a couple members. Malswell getting caught out by that stun, forced into the Aegis, but immediately getting Circuit ulted thanks to the Morgan ult.
Circuit ult was good for pulling Malswell back in. That Dot was bleeding with Skeleton, able to take up Venenu. And while this all was happening, Scream was also able to push in and take the tier 1 tower on right. So despite giving up Venenu, they pushed the tier 1 tower in right, and Panda Cat was looking for a moment to still continue in mid, but they back off.
Probably the safer decision by United. They already got 1 tower. That's a little bit more map control for them. And considering that Noble was so poked out, and it's just the missing of the creep wave, they needed a little bit more time on that creep wave if Panda Cat wanted to try and secure that T1 tower in mid.
Is that another mark in favor of Benji? That tower went down, so he won lane, right? Like, he's good to go, right?
Oh, no, that's how it always works.
Yeah.
And I think that also this over-aggression from Walrus can kind of be credited to him just knowing Benji personally, and those two just wanting to consistently fight against each other. They've been brawling so much. I do feel as though Walrus has kind of ignored his map surroundings a little bit more, which is a slight competitive advantage for Benji.
Scream is rotating around, though, and there he is blinking on the WoW. He doesn't have his beads available. He does have that ultimate, but he's not going to be able to get to use it. Panda Cat deletes him, and from the rotation from Scream around the back of that tower.
Entirely too much damage to handle right now. Although that does mean that Scream's Blink is on a cooldown. Benji, however, just happily eating up both of these ultimates from Noble, trying to get away back to the safety of his own T1, and it's not enough damage to take him out.
Wubbin rotated in, or rather Walrus did, looking for the pin on the Benji, but just not quite able to get it, so they end up backing off. But the tier 2 tower in left ends up falling. No one from Noble were able to rotate over to stop it, and Benji just kind of chilling, knowing that they got the better of that trade.
But look who is rotating right now. It's the rest of EU United that just finished pushing down that T2 tower. Noble's got their eyes set on that portal demon, but not sure this is an objective they should really risk contesting. Watch as Veneno wraps around the backside, trying to get that Invis off onto anyone from Noble, really.
Gets pulled in as Veneno and immediately has to use his Aegis taunt now. Coming out from Walrus, pulling in Polar Bear Mike and forcing the spread, but it's Scream who goes into the backline trying to put in damage. WoW uses his ultimate through the team fight and lands in the back. Now he's dueling with Panda Cat, but has to run away. Veneno in a bad spot after turning into Sir Cat. He's just going to have to run away. So again, a lot of exchange of cooldowns, but everybody's okay.
For the most part, Walrus almost the only victim there, and same for Veneno. It was actually looking a little bit more in favor for Noble all around. Just seemed as though United, recognizing they were starting to become in a slight disadvantage, backing off.
Noble recognized, though, that a lot of United had to back, so they're going to take this Portal Demon down to half. But Benji and Polar Bear Mike are here. Looks like that's not quite enough for them to back up yet, and Wubbin pays for it with his life. Credit goes to Benji. Mazwal drops the ultimate on top of Benji, but he's just so tanky at this point. Benji does eventually get cleaned up by Skilladon, but Polar Bear Mike jumps in for Mazwal. That might not have been so good as the rest of Noble are here.
And he's just getting collapsed upon by 3 different members from Noble. Walrus able to land the pin, so it's going to be Wowie's bounty for that kill onto Polar Bear Mike.
That is 2 members of EU United that end up dropping. Both Benji and Polar Mike fall just for Wubbin. Portal Demon does not get taken, but Noble will recognize it again, and they're back to give it one more try. But the Gold Fury gets taken by Panda Cat, so likely they're going to trade the Portal Demon for the Gold Fury as well as those 2 kills.
And in this circumstance, would probably favor the Gold Fury right now as opposed to having that Portal Demon secured, because Noble don't really have much legroom to work with as far as trying to sneak a Fire Giant is concerned.
Definitely favor EU United's 5,000 gold lead they're sitting on right now, up ahead of Noble. 8-6 are the kills, so they're leading in the kill count as well. As you said, normally the Portal Demon doesn't do too much because you don't go for the Fire Giant, but it looks like they're actually on it. Veneno is here in local, though. He's going to try and come around the back and help contest it. No one else from EU United is here to try and help. They get the Fire Giant, but now Veneno is here as well as Panda Cat. Scream blinks in, gets the ultimate off on the Wowie, but he takes a bunch of damage immediately.
And Wowie's still trying to get away, but he's unable to do so. Benji with that insane knockup, stopping Wowie in his tracks and allowing for his mid laner Veneno to get the kill.
Noble still get the Fire Giant, though, which is kind of a big deal at this point in the game. That's going to slow down some of the lead that EU United have. It's hard to fight into a Fire Giant team. They no longer have it on Wowie. AD carries are one of the better characters to have it on, but still, I'm sure you're happy to have it on 4 members of the Tier 1 tower. In mid does fall in favor of EU United.
They might have lost it on Wowie, but they still have it on Mazwal. All eyes should be on protecting this mid laner because Soul is going to be their primary focal point as far as Tower Shred and Phoenix Shred is concerned. Although I imagine that Noble is going to prioritize just knocking out those remaining towers. Now, I don't think that they'll have the Fire Giant long enough to really look for a Phoenix unless they drastically win a team fight from EU United trying to defend a T2.
Double ward for twice the vision there for Noble, so I mean, they really know what's going on at that spot. Do you think Noble are going to be using this more as like a handbrake for the match, or are they going to be looking to try and push with this Fire Giant?
A little bit of both, and realistically speaking, they need to push with Fire Giant. It's going to be their best opportunity for knocking out these towers, and considering that there's still 2 T1s on the map, that's really what their focus should be.
Wowie now is back on the map, and he's rotating in using that passive to cut down some of his travel distance, or at least the travel time. Backing off, though, are EU United, and it looks like Noble aren't quite sure where they want to make their call to push. They've got 3 members in solo lane, perhaps looking to take that Tier 1 tower, and only Benji here to try and slow it down. I say only Benji, who's level 17, and looking very much like a monster at this point in the game. Skilladon rotating in, though, so this could potentially be trouble for Polar Bear Mike and Benji, as the rest of their team is hanging out in mid.
United aren't going to put up too much of defense on these T1 towers, considering that this is what's going to follow up after. Polar Bear Mike eating that Susano ultimate, and Benji, neither of them really looking to defend, because happening in the middle lane, they've got Scream and Venenu.
If they can three-man defend this Tier 2 tower over and right, it'll be very much worth it, as the Tier 2 tower has fallen. Benji trying to knock up 2, and the ultimate comes out from Panda Cat to rain down the Suns. Polar Bear Mike goes into the Draconic form, but he gets locked in, and now he gets deleted. Skeleton gets credit for it, but Panda Cat is able to take down Wubbin. Instead of continuing to push in middle lane, we see that Venenu is actually on his way to rotate to the team fight to try and help out.
Scream actually has his blink available, and Venenu is going to slow everybody down on the backside, transforming into that Kakolin just to help ensure that Wowie dies, and only Walrus and Skeleton left. Both of them should be able to get away, but it's still hard to say, and no, Walrus going to get caught up actually thanks to that kiss from Scream.
Venenu bringing in the damage. Panda Cat taking the credit. 4-1 were the kills in that exchange. Tier 2 tower in mid lane falls. No one here to defend Tier 2 tower in solo lane as well, so that will also fall in favor of United. That fight swings heavily in their favor. Now they're going to be up very much near 10,000 gold thanks to the global gold from this tower, and with the pressure on the map as well, they back up to take the jungle of Noble.
It took so long for Noble to finally commit to trying to tower siege, and it's somewhat understandable, because with Wowie having died right after they picked up the Fire Giant, they were sort of forced to wait for his respawn to have maximum DPS for the tower shred. And unfortunately, Noble's still just a little bit too far behind to have any sort of real dent placed against that T2 and E United solo lane.
And everyone on E United, they're all smart guys, but in particular, Polar Bear Mike is a real sort of cerebral dude, so I gotta wonder if he's a part of that shot call they make in mid lane, because that's a big part of why that went so well. Not only did they get the Tier 2 tower, but Venenu is able to rotate in on the backside of that team fight, using the ultimate to transform into Benji and just clean up those remaining kills. Now the game firmly in control of E United as they push around the map, trying to establish some ward control around that Fire Giant pit, which is now 33 seconds away from respawning, but looking to try and start up the Portal Demon are Noble.
There's only a couple of names that really come to mind whenever I see split pushing happening in the SPL, and when it comes to NA, hold that thought though, is Skeleton is actually getting aggressed onto. Wowie forced up into the ultimate. Wubbin also trying to escape, but nowhere left to go.
Wubbin 3 levels behind Polar Bear Mike, and it's showing as he gets deleted by Venenu. Moswell drops his ultimate, but it feels a little bit like a futile effort as he gets cleaned up by Scream. 2-for-0 in favor of E United, and they're just going to group up and take this mid lane tower while they have the power play, or mid lane Phoenix rather, already down below half health, already down in favor of E United.
Walrus, pretty much one of the only members from Noble that's moderately tanky enough to try and eat up some of that damage. It's just knew that he stood no chance and didn't even bother trying to contest, and rightfully so, because if Walrus goes down, I wouldn't be surprised if E United just try to end it then and there.
You see Polar Bear might get that last coerce onto his whole team right before he transforms back into that dwarf form. Excellent play there to get him a little bit extra attack speed. Not that they need it though. No one from Noble is even going to try and contest it here. They recognize they can't fight into it. Instead, just go take a little bit of the farm from E United, try and push up the minion wave in this duo lane side, and get what they can from these objectives as E United back, spin their gold lead, and come rushing down with the Fire Giant around their waists.
Noble have got to be careful here, though. Polar Bear Mike already recognizing that they're here. Wouldn't be surprised if he tries to slow one of them down for backing. Walrus looking like the target of choice, but since that hammer is just off the mark, they'll be able to get away. And going back to what I was saying, when it comes to NA and split pushing, there's only a couple names that come to mind, and it's Scream and DJ Pernicus. And I mean, it's not Bastet, but if there's anybody who's keen for split pushing, it's going to be Scream.
And Scream did an excellent job of it in that mid lane, a big part of why that fight went so in favor of E United. And you talked a little bit about how it took them so long to make the push. It not just takes so long to make the push, but they weren't even able to get any damage onto the tower. The three members of E United were able to defend so effectively against that push that there was really no way for that fight to go in favor of Noble. Now it looks like the plans are trying to get all these waves pushing down as Benji in the solo lane goes back to bring the minion waves up. It's Polar Bear Mike in mid lane, and then the three members helping to push down over here in duo lane, the furthest from the Fire Giant, which will likely be their eventual call.
it's going to be so difficult for Noble to try and hold off United from these final Phoenix sieges, knowing that their mid lane has already got fire creeps pouring in, and having to sacrifice one member in the mid lane at all times to prevent that from happening. A Scream kind of just running around in front of Noble, almost taunting them in a way.
He's got that Maggie's Blessing. He's not scared. Gets to avoid that first layer of crowd control that lands on him while he still has that bubble popping for him. Polar Bear Mike gets the stun off on the Wubbin, and Wubbin gets deleted immediately. He's too far behind to be the front line. Now it's Scream's turn to go jumping in on top of Skeledon. The damage is a lot, but the Aegis is better. It keeps him alive for the moment, but only for the moment. Panda Cat gets credit for that kill, dropping the Suns on top of the fountain. They can't even heal through the damage. Phoenix actually is still standing. They're just going to go for the Titan as United look to end.
There's no way that Noble can possibly stop this. That's a full team coerced by the Fafnir ultimate, and sure enough, United with a